Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lonely Artist Podcast. My name is Ariane, and today I have a very special guest for you. Jasmin is a Latinx illustrator with a passion for storytelling. She makes warm and whimsical illustrations with an organic touch by drawing them by hand and usually digitally coloring them. She has been freelancing part-time for more than 5 years now, and in her free time, she works on self-publishing her sci-fi webcomics Space Warriors, developing future projects like Girl Night, a medieval graphic novel series, and filming blogs and tutorials for her YouTube channel. So help me in welcoming Jasmin. I'm just so happy to have you here. Like I said, I binge watched most of your YouTube. And I also kind of stalked you low key, like your website and your Instagram. Not only
Yes.
because of the interview, but you're so talented. And that's one of the reasons why I asked you to join the podcast. I just really, really wanted to get a little bit of an insight inside of your brain.
Yes.
So
Absolutely. I'm
again, thank
here.
you so much
All
for being here.
everything. I mean, really, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. And I always like to work with artists that are not like crazy popular, like billions of followers and stuff,
Yeah,
because I just would rather stay within the community. So just I care about that more for sure.
that's awesome. And those are the same values that I have with the podcast that I have. I usually try to interview people who are still within like the reachable boundaries of art and like are still relatable. They're still
Yeah,
trying to figure out what, their journey is. I feel like that's
totally.
very valuable and a little bit more real. I feel like it's not all rainbows all the time for us.
Yep.
So I thought
Oh
I might
yeah.
as well, interview all of us and see what's going on.
Yeah, and especially when you mention diversity, like especially when it's a relatable artist, their backgrounds are all so different. They all have very different upbringings, very different journeys, and when you can actually communicate with them, I think you get a better sense of their voice and also what they're learning with. Because on my YouTube channel, I've mentioned before, like, you're not going to get just tutorials. It's mostly just going to be me talking about what's going on. And
Yeah.
half the time it's a struggle. So
Yeah.
I
Your
think that's
videos
just as
feel like
important.
they feel like a Zoom call with a friend and she's just telling you all of what's going on, all the
All the
struggles.
angst, all the
Yeah.
struggles, everything.
That would literally be me if I blogged like my artistic journey. I would just be, I don't know, falling apart every 5 minutes,
Every
probably.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll do is just sometimes there's a camera in front and a
Yeah.
little bit of bravery too. Because
Yeah.
when I first started the YouTube channel, I just wanted to put more of a more professional front.
Hmm.
But then I realized that the videos that I enjoyed watching were the ones where they were super honest and relatable. And
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter when you're putting a persona of just that you have it all together
Hmm.
without all that chaos that's really happening. So
Yeah.
that's partly why I realized like that's not helpful. So I'd rather be more helpful than just put this professional veneer. It's
Exactly.
just not. We don't need that. We don't need more of that.
Exactly. I mean, we have more than enough of that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the main reasons why I appreciate your channel. It low key has also inspired me to relax with my YouTube channel because also I was trying to be this like grand persona who I'm
Right?
not really. So now I'm
Right?
just I literally just sit down with my microphone and just talk about what's going on with, art and my thoughts and things like that. So I have you to thank for that.
Awesome. Have you found that to be helpful for yourself too, like
Oh
therapeutic?
yes,
I found that
so
too.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, after I talk it all out, I'm like, why do I feel better?
Yeah,
Now I have to
exactly.
post it.
Exactly. It's like the viewers are your therapist just listening to you and like letting you just let it all out. So yeah.
And the comments, yes, absolutely.
Relatable.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So tell me, When did your artistic journey begin? Where did it all begin for you?
I think where it begins, like with most artists at school or when you're not thinking about art, you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it only becomes a thing when you're suddenly aware of it as an external thing. So I used to draw all the time. When I was little, I would trace a lot. I would watch a lot of cartoons like Sailor Moon. I was living in Mexico when it first came out in 1994, so
Oh
I
my
was obsessed
God.
with Sailor Moon,
You
obsessed
were
with
at the
Dragon Ball.
peak of anime in Mexico at that
Yep,
time.
that was when Mexico was way cooler
Oh, yes.
than the U.S. about anime. Like people don't know that. Like we were the first ones in that.
Right?
Cool. So I was just consuming all of this anime when I was really little, like 5 years old. And in consuming all of that, I felt this need to have to create off of that. So I would make fan art from Sailor Moon. I would just think for hours about possible episodes, extra episodes, because then Sailor Moon, some of the episodes would end without a good conclusion. So I would make up these scenes with Tuxedo Mask and Sailor Moon. And it's a pretty embarrassing beginning, but honestly, that's truly where it started, and it has never stopped from there. It has just gone into original storytelling instead of just fan fiction.
Yeah.
So once I was in high school, the question of what are you going to do with that? And that was the new struggle was balancing your creative dreams and also financial realities. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when all of that kind of came into play as like, okay, this is a journey now. This is part of who I am, and what are we going to do?
Yeah.
So the journey itself started when I was really little, but
Mm-hmm.
it's through school that you have to make something out of it, I guess.
Yeah. Were you still in Mexico in high school?
No, I wasn't. We moved to New Jersey.
Oh,
So
okay.
middle school and high school, I was in the US. Um, and then from New Jersey, we moved to LA after college.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cool how you must have had a lot of like cultural shifts between places,
Oh,
and
yeah.
those probably also influenced you and your art.
The escapist quality, yes. Moving back to the US after Mexico was kind of a tough time. I didn't speak properly, so I would stick out a lot and get bullied.
Mm,
And so the drawing and the storytelling became an escapist thing to do.
yeah.
So it was a coping mechanism at one point. So I'm very grateful to have that outlet.
Yeah. I feel like drawing can be super meditative and just healing
Yep.
most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely relate to that. But now, after, starting with school and your um, passion for art, then you went on to college and kind of studied a few other things. Like you have a background in history and design as well as business. So I wanted to know, like, how did those influence your work nowadays, and how did you like go from that to trying to pursue art full time, or pursuing it right now full time?
Yes. So it's that whole debate of how do you make the compromise between following what you want to do, but also having to make a living. So once I was in college, it became quite clear that I I started doing business just because my parents influenced me and thinking that I could do art without having to go to school for it. So I did
Mhm.
start college learning business administration. And the idea was I would just work in business administration as a full time career and then do art on the side. But very quickly in college, I realized it just wasn't working out. It was pretty miserable just taking these business classes. So I switched to art to the extreme and said, I'm just going to study art. I don't like this. And I studied illustration for a year, But I was also a little bit frustrated with just focusing on art in college. I was very anxious about not allowing the possibility that if I wasn't going to be able to make art as a living, what would I be doing? And I was fearful that I was kind of closing some doors, some possible doors, if in case it didn't work out. I'm a very anxious person, so that kind of went into it. It was
Okay.
really hard to enjoy art school knowing that I could be doing a mistake in studying art when I know lots of people who were doing art as a living without having gone to art school. And I think it's still a debate to this day whether do you really need to go to art school to make a living out of it. So that question really was haunting me every day when I was studying art. So after a year, I just couldn't handle it anymore. So I switched to history. And history, I realized it's a major that you could apply in business, or you could apply it in teaching, you could apply it in law, pretty much anything that in any industry. So the flexibility of studying history kind of felt better than sticking to a very specific major that could potentially leave me cornered
Yeah.
in my career. So that was very important to me. And that's why I ended up having 3 different studies. So I did major in history, but I minored in art and business just because I studied them for a little bit over a year. So if anyone struggles with trying to figure out what to do education wise, if they're really not sure, then probably just having a variety of studies would be the path to go. So I'm happy I did that. It took me an extra year of college, but I walked away feeling like I at least tried all of those different fields, and I did the compromise that I felt like I needed to do. So I don't quite regret it. Yeah, that's why there's so many different majors. But yeah, maybe the business not necessary. Didn't need to take that.
Well, I feel like maybe you traded in an extra year of college for a lifetime of less anxiety about, your future. And
Yes.
also, it feels to me from what I've seen of your work that, well, business really does apply to being an artist nowadays. And you do seem to enjoy history because you're integrating it to your work as well. So maybe it all kind of came together how it was supposed to at the end.
Weirdly, yes,
Yeah.
weirdly. I still think that the business, unless I mean when I'm talking to younger kids who are thinking about college, unless they're going to be a VP or a manager, maybe the business might not be necessary. But I definitely think that if you are not sure about your careers, minoring in art is not a bad idea. So that's what I ended up doing. And I do like history. So I just didn't know what I was going to do after college. Was I going to be a teacher? Was I going to be in business? I don't know. So that's why I do the history. And I love history. And I do incorporate it in all of my artwork. So you're totally right about that. It is related to what I do. So if anyone is looking for any college advice, is just try to find the interests and keep your options open all the time.
I think that's great advice, and I'm sure a lot of people are struggling with figuring it out now, especially with how weird the world has gotten. So,
Right. And how
yeah,
expensive college has become. So
exactly.
it's a risk to just take a full art school and not be sure if it's going to work out. So if you're not sure,
Exactly.
then a minor is perfectly fine.
Yeah. Well, and I said this at the beginning, but you're the first Latinx person that I have in my podcast, which I'm really happy about. But I also was excited about that because I wanted to ask you, as a fellow Latinx person, how do you feel like that has set you apart, if at all, with your artistic journey or even your life living in the States and all that? Like, how has it been for you? Maybe we can narrow it down to the art world if you like, but just how do you feel that has set you apart?
That's a really good question. And with any form of juggling different cultural identities, where that comes in terms of either skills or how you incorporate it into your art, I think broadly speaking, it helps with immersing yourself in a different world and being able to jump into different worlds pretty easily,
Mm-hmm.
especially like for us in a Hispanic culture versus more of an Americanized culture. They're quite different in some areas. So being able to just jump between them, even linguistically, is something that it's almost natural now. So with writing and my art, that ability to just jump to a different mindset pretty quickly,
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty natural process. And also my own identity, I mean, it was a source of anxiety at one point in my upbringing when I moved back to the US. I
Mm-hmm.
was bullied a lot for being different and just culturally different, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And that did impact the way I view art as well as an escapist tool. So that does play a lot into my identity and also just how I handle making art.
Yeah. Do you ever visit Mexico again? Like now
Mm-hmm.
that you're an adult? Well, not right now with, the whole
Obviously, yeah.
pandemic going on, but
Yep, I have family there. The last time I went was for my cousin's wedding in Guadalajara.
mm.
So that was about 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Oh, nice. So I took a sort of a deep dive into your website because, I got a bit slightly obsessed. And and your client work is beautiful. It's just astonishing. Astonishing? Was that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, astonishing.
Astonishing.
Astonishing. Yeah, I'm trying to use big boy words here, so excuse me if I don't say them correctly. But what I wanted to ask about that is how do you go about finding opportunities for your work and projects like the ones that you worked on? Because the body of work that we're able to see on your website is amazing. So I just wanted to know how you go about finding those opportunities.
It's a really good question, and that's kind of the gold question in college as well. Is yes, you have your portfolio, yes, you have your skills, but how are you gonna make money out of it? How are you going to find clients? And there really is no straight answer. And I thought there was, but now that I've been working in freelancing for several years now, unfortunately, there really isn't a singular way to find these magical clients. I have had to try so many different things to find them, and it truly is keep trying. And once you find a couple of clients, some of them will come back and some of them will recommend other clients to you. And it just kind of eventually grows throughout the years.
Yeah.
What I do like to recommend for people who are starting to freelance is to, or at least one thing that I've tried that really worked, was to use those freelancing platforms like Upwork,
Mm-hmm.
where you can grow your professional portfolio and find clients. And if you find clients, you open yourself to the opportunity that they might recommend other
Yeah.
people to you. So you broaden your network.
Mm-hmm.
And I recommend Upwork and not anything else like Fiverr or those other websites, because those are just pretty exploitative. But
Yeah.
Upwork, I found it to be a middle ground where, yes, you're not making a lot of money, but you are growing your portfolio. So that professional page from my website, that all started from Upwork. I was struggling with finding these clients. It's a very competitive market, so you just need to start small and slowly grow. So it takes time.
Yeah, and that's great advice. And I would also recommend for anybody who's listening to go to your channel because you have a whole video about this actually.
Yes, I
And
explain that. Mm-hmm.
yeah, you go a little bit more in depth about it, and I feel like that would also be great information for anybody who's interested in that specific question. I know
Yep.
I looked at it because I wanted to know. And funny enough, I think I discovered your channel with a video that you made about switching from Photoshop to Clip Studio Paint, because at the time I was switching to Clip Studio Paint. So it was extremely helpful. And I think your videos are super helpful. So yeah, definitely recommend for people to go check out your channel.
Thank you.
So I'm also really excited to see what you're going to be doing with Girl Night. I know you're working on it right now, right? And
Yes.
it seems to me like it's going to be a kind of a hero's journey kind of
Yep.
story. That's the sense that I'm getting.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to know how your previous projects have helped you work on this new one that you're working on. How have they taught you different ways of going about a new project?
Whew. Well, the thing is that this Girl Night project has been a journey, a very personal journey of just trying to figure out how do you go from one idea of one thing that came out of drawing of one illustration. I made one illustration with this random character. She's wearing knight's armor, and I was like, this is cool. She seems interesting. I feel like she has a whole backstory. And from starting from that day when I drew that, it has spawned into this huge thing where it's now going to be a graphic novel series that I want to draw. Um, so that whole process has been a very big growing process. But to go to your question of how have my previous projects helped in creating that, I think one, confidence in saying I'm going to turn that into something else. and and two is having really good organizational skills, because if you want to tackle a big project, you need to be able to know how to organize your ideas, and to be able to form those ideas into a bigger idea.
Mhm.
So I have learned how to write outlines. I've learned more on dialogue and how to project plan. I've done other comics in the past, and that has helped me apply that with Girl Night, where I've did start with an outline, I thumbnailed it, and then it's completed. So with Girl Night, it's the same exact process. It's just
Mhm.
on steroids because it's going to be such a big story.
Yeah.
And a hero's journey is a long one, and it has to make sense as well. So it's not a simple project, unfortunately.
It looks very epic. You can get that sense even from the little snippets that we've had of you working on the project. And I think um it's hard to after you come up with an idea, which anybody can do, and it's easy to come up with that one single illustration, to like build this monster of a story behind it. And
Yep.
it's kudos to you, man, because I'm trying to do that right now. It's so hard.
Yeah, and one of my last vlogs, it was kind of a downer vlog where I realized the story is not ready to be fleshed out,
Mhm.
and I was just really frustrated that I put away, or I put all this time, all this energy, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna write it. And so once I sat down, nothing was coming out, and I just didn't understand what it was. But I've actually spent the past 2 months just reading fantasy novels
Mhm.
and reading history books about the period,
Mhm.
and I think I just needed time to just let it all kind of simmer and marinate and not
Yeah.
think about forcing it out. So
Mhm.
if you're not trying to force it out, it'll just come out naturally. And that's what happened. I actually wrote the whole outline last week for
Oh
Girl Night,
wow.
which is,
Congratulations on that.
yes,
That's a big step.
it's taken me, I think, 3 years to just come out with an outline, just a sequence of events. And I think that's what I was missing. I was trying to sit down and write it, and it's how are you going to write something that you don't even know where it's going to go? So I'm
Mhm.
going to try again to write it now that I know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And but it's been a process, and it's the exact same process as if you were to tackle a small project. Just just requires more time.
Well, talking about smaller projects, I don't know if it's smaller, but Space Warriors.
Hmm.
It's so different from Girl Night, but it's super interesting. I actually finished reading it. Well, whatever is on Webtoons right now. Finished reading that like a couple of weeks ago. Has such a I to me it has kind of like an eerie sci-fi mood to it, and I was like, there was a bit of suspense for me while reading it. I was like, what's gonna happen? It's so intriguing, and I'm a sci-fi weeb, so I definitely am biased towards sci-fi stories.
100% biased, yes.
I mean, look at my shirt.
Oh, whoa!
So like, yeah, definitely biased, but
Facts.
but I wanted to ask you, like, how do you come up with that story? And it's a completely different genre from Girl Night. Like, how did that one, how was it born?
Yes. It's so interesting to have to explain how I have a sci fi story with aliens, and I also have a medieval story taking place in France in like an actual historical period. So Space Warriors it came out um, when I was working in business and just not very happy with where I was in my life. So I ended up just doodling a lot. I was kind of bored, not stimulated. And so my mind really wandered into these mini existential crises. And I was going through them through the eyes of a lonely alien in space. Um, who wanted to kind of save humans but didn't really know what they were doing. And so it
Wow.
all started with a post-it note, and I was just doodling and just feeling very lonely and confused. And from those post-its, the same process as with Girl Night. These look like interesting characters. I feel like there's a story behind it. Where is this gonna go? And then more images came out, and then I started to figure out like, what are these people, what are they doing,
Mhm.
and what is this about. So their journey was very much what I was going through back then of, where am I going? I'm really lonely. And
Yeah.
just trying to make sense of that was helping me make sense and take control of my life too. So that's where it came, that the sci-fi aspect is space and how empty it is, and how there's this feeling of being really lonely
Hmm.
and always yearning to find answers in the vastness of space. And it just really clicked for some reason back then, and it still does. I'm really, I'm in a happy place right now, but it's still interesting to see how easily I can go back to that space just to develop it more.
Yeah.
And it'll never go away. So that Space Warrior story, it is smaller than Girl Night. What's on Webtoons is part one of three parts.
Hmm.
So yes, the first part, a lot of questions are asked. There's suspense,
Yeah.
and you really don't know what's going on. We just have these characters who are kind of doing what they think they're supposed to be doing, and that's it. So part two, we're gonna go into, there's something wrong and something is off,
Hmm.
but they're still trying to do what they're doing. And then part three is the grand conclusion of, we finally have answers and what's going to happen with these characters. So I'm working on part two right now. I'm drawing, I've already thumbnailed it and written it. So it's just a matter of drawing it and coloring it. So
I
I
see.
do hope that it'll become live in fall of this year.
Oh,
So you'll start
nice.
seeing more pages in fall.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Plus, fall's my favorite season, so yay. Everything is just aligning.
Yes.
I really like your style. When you send me the text about like your small introduction, I definitely agree with the word whimsical. It looks like that with all your pieces. There's a very unique quality to them. And I really like that you kind of married both traditional and digital media.
it's something that I thought about when I started doing digital art because it's kind of hard to transition from traditional to digital.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you, was that like a conscious choice, or did you just find yourself enjoying drawing over traditional work more than starting from digital all the way to, finishing a piece?
For me, it's always been what it looks like. And I've always been attracted to old illustrations from turn of the century.
Hmm.
And like, I'm spacing out, but just the French illustrators who there is a sort of textury feel to their illustrations. I don't like super clean, super concept arty styles. I do like them. I just don't think that they match with the mood of the stories I'm trying to tell, which are
Hmm.
more grounded
They do feel
and
like that. More
and more
textured.
whimsical. Yeah, more textured and
Yeah.
just there's lots of layers to how I tell my stories, and
Hmm.
so that more traditional feeling feels like it's a children's story meant for adults. I think that's
Yeah.
how. Yeah.
And I think you can see from your work that European inspiration and
Mm-hmm.
that French look to them, and I
Mm-hmm.
really like that.
Me
It's
too.
you're
Yeah.
you're probably the only person that I follow which follows that type of that kind of style. So every time you post something, like it immediately stands out when I'm
Oh,
looking at my
really?
timeline. Yeah, because I feel like right now there's this kind of homogenous look to digital art in a lot of parts and a lot of places with a lot of artists. Sometimes I feel like social media influences us to a point where everybody's doing a copy of everybody else
Yes.
without
The
really,
algorithm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. It's like what works is working, so more people do what works. So it's all we see all the time.
Right.
And I really appreciate that originality. And it's hard to stick uh, to your creative journey, to your originality when you see all this other work that's way more mainstream.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, like, do you deal with insecurities about that? Do you compare yourself to other artists often, or do you just not care about it?
So I used to a lot, especially when I wasn't doing freelancing yet. My identity was so tied with thinking that, oh, not my identity, my self worth as an artist was so tied to numbers on social media and to how many professional jobs I've done.
Mm.
And I just constantly felt not good enough, or like I couldn't call myself an artist because I didn't have the numbers and I didn't have the jobs. And it is such a toxic way of viewing things. And I don't, it was wrong, absolutely wrong. And what got me out of that really unhealthy view was, um, well, finally realizing that none of that really matters. And the only way I could realize that is by getting lots of jobs, freelance jobs, to the point where it's like, oh, okay, I've gotten the jobs. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed except I don't care as much. And focusing on the people who truly do interact with you on social media that kind of brighten your day, like interacting with you, and those are way more important and uh, than just the numbers and the likes. So in shifting my attention to that, I realize I feel more fulfilled
Yeah.
when I have a more genuine connection with people. I might not have that many followers, but the followers I do have, I talk to them and I can tell that they're moved by my art, and I love following their journeys and seeing them change and seeing what new things that they're into, and it's just that's so much more rewarding than the next best thing on Instagram. So
Yeah.
it was also dispelling the idea that you have to be popular on Instagram in order to be successful. And it took me a while to realize that you really don't. As long as you have an Instagram profile that looks good,
Mhm.
it doesn't really matter how many followers you have and how many likes you have. So if shifting away from social media clout to work on your art and just do better, I think that's a better way of viewing social media. So I used to have a very toxic relationship with social media, but lately I've just gotten so busy that I haven't had time to really focus on the more toxic aspects. And I'm seeing a lot of artists just taking breaks from social media way more than I used to.
Yeah,
So
me
it
too.
seems like that it's everyone's kind of realizing that you really don't have to be on social media all the time to really to reap its benefits.
It seems way more sustainable to look at it that way, for sure.
Right. Yeah, like give it 10% effort and you'll get the same results. So, yeah.
I like that view on things, and I'm really happy that you're not at a place where you are comparing yourself to others. So that's really cool that you don't. And I wanted to ask you, what would you say is like one of the major difficulties that you've had to face in your art journey, if it isn't, at right now comparing yourself to other artists?
The most difficult has been being really hard on myself. Going back to the anxiety mind, that anxiety can transform how you treat yourself, how you make decisions about your art. If you feel very anxious about your art, you're not going to be making the decisions that are for you. For example, like talking about social media, what's the next drawing that you want to make? Are you going to choose something that you think the algorithm's going to like, or are you going to choose something that you genuinely like to do? And on the long run, what you genuinely like to do is going to be better for you because it's your voice. And at the end of the day, that's way more precious than being marketable. So for me, being really hard on myself that I wasn't marketable, that I wasn't part of the algorithm, that was really tough to contend with. And it's been a struggle, and I just don't struggle with it right now, but I remind myself that I used to be like that, and it's important to just recognize that that struggle was there and that it's been a journey.
Yeah,
Just believing in my voice and staying true to it and not changing how my characters look because their lips aren't full enough, because we all know Instagram girls with big lips,
God,
they're like
yes.
a big deal. For example, there's just one little thing of like these little micro decisions that you can make in your drawings. And it's like, is it you or is it social media telling you what to do? And it's
so true.
Yeah, it's scary.
It is.
So finding my voice and believing in it has been a struggle.
It's good to know that I'm not alone in that struggle. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Right, yeah. So,
well, let's shift it to something a bit more positive than the struggles and all of that. Tell me, who are your biggest art inspirations? Who moves you the most, or who influences your art the most?
Right now, well, it depends on the story. So Space Warriors was heavily influenced visually by Mobius. He's a French comic artist. And so when I was looking at his images, I was immediately very inspired. Throughout my life, it's been Amano Yoshitaka's artwork. I know my artwork looks nothing like his stuff, but something about his art is so inspiring to think that he's literally just drawing what he wants to draw, and it is the purest thing to watch. And he's so creative and prolific. He has so much artwork out there. So Amano Yoshitaka, Toulouse-Lautrec is another inspiration of mine, and he's a French almost impressionist artist. And so it's varied. I don't have a specific artist, and that's what I tell people too, is find lots of inspirations, very diverse inspirations. so that all of that can go into your unique voice. So all of the artists I listed have completely different styles, and I think that's important too.
Yeah, I mean, we all kind of feed off of everything we look at. So if we see something that's all the same, it's not really going to shape up a new creative look to our work or anything like that. We're just going to be copying each other.
Yes, so the artists I listed are the ones I've been consistently obsessed with for decades. So they're still on my top list for sure.
And currently, because we like to support, the smaller artist community, do you follow anybody who you think needs a little bit more recognition that maybe doesn't have it?
Yes, so I'm constantly sharing the work of artists that I follow with smaller audiences just to uplift them.
Mhm.
So if anyone follows me, you'll notice on my stories that I'm not sharing people's work who have billions of followers. If you go to their profiles, they all have less than 100,000 followers. But Tamia Bedouin, she's a French artist. I love her artwork. Rebecca Burke, she's a comic artist with really relatable content as an artist who writes. So I'm obsessed with her comics as well.
Nice. So would you say those are the people that everybody needs to go follow?
For now, there's a longer list. I just can't think of them, especially when they're all usernames.
Oh, I know. I don't remember any usernames. Sometimes I even like forget what my handles are. And I just have to look them up to be like, okay, this is what it is.
Yep.
I'm actually gonna have to ask you to like send them to me written down so I can post them in the description because I'm not gonna remember
Oh
the
yes,
names.
I'll write them all for sure.
Well, and for anybody who is still listening to this very long podcast, do you have any advice for anybody who's wanting to pursue art and storytelling right now in this current era of this weird world that we're living in?
For right now, I would say stay less time on social media and consume a lot of books and make more art. So basically, uh, I try to, what am I trying to say? When I was younger, I was extremely creative. I was constantly creating. And then as soon as I got older, when the responsibilities came in, and then social media came in, I produced a lot less and I felt less creative. So now I'm trying to strive to go back to that place of creativity and not stray away from it. So when people ask me for the main advice, it's to just forget social media and try to consume and create as much as you can without thinking about marketability and your profession and career. None of that matters because all of that is built upon what you're going to create. So focus on creating something that you like to do and don't let social media tell you what that is.
I love that. I love that. I hope you're all listening to this, children. Anybody who's listening. And well, what do you have any plans for the near future? What does it look like for you in the future right now? What are you planning on working on, or what are you up
Yes.
to?
So my main goals this year are to continue Space Warriors pretty aggressively because I want part two to come out already. I'm dying to continue telling that story. And the second thing is to work on Girl Night so that I can have it all written out by the end of this year. And we'll see what happens with writing it. I would love to consider having a publisher with that. I'm not sure how that process would go, but my main focus is just to develop these two stories. It used to be to create lots of pretty pictures, but I've done them. So now I really want to have a more of a legacy with storytelling, and I want to have my foot more in publishing. So hopefully by the end of this year, I'll have actual projects to sort of start next year with.
Hmm. Well, I hope we all get to see that. I'm sure you're gonna share it with us in your YouTube vlogs if you feel like it.
Oh
We
yes.
definitely love to see that. I'm
Yes.
super
So
interested in how that all works because I'm also asking myself like how do you find a publisher? How do you go about all of those things?
oh
Seems a
yeah,
bit
I'll be
daunting.
vlogging that whole process. I keep wanting to do tutorials, and I wanted to do a clip studio tutorial, but it's like I'm not interested in. There's so many videos out there of how
Yeah.
to start Clip Studio Paint. So, it's my YouTube is mostly going to just document this process, especially with Girl Night. Since I finished the outline, I feel like I've come at this huge breakthrough with the story where I can finally move forward with it. So I would like to document that on YouTube and talk about not only the writing process, but also how to do historical research when you're incorporating art and
Hmm.
how that works. Because I've gotten pretty good at how to do historical research with storytelling. So there's lots of little tidbits I want to share through my journey. So YouTube will definitely be the place to sort of follow along on my plans this year.
Well, that would be awesome. That will be awesome to look at when it comes out as you go.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to finish the interview with this question that I ask everybody. And it's if you could have any magical power to help you in your artistic process, what would you like it to be?
Oh, yes. I would love to control time. I'd love to pause time so that I can create as much as I can, because that's the thing that I'm constantly fighting is just time. So that would be my special power. It's just time control.
I love that. I always complain that the only bad thing about like not a bad thing, but like the one thing that it bothers me all the time about being an artist is like you can try and streamline everything you do. There's
Oof.
no way of being efficient with the amount of hours it takes you to draw. Like there's no way to make it quicker. You just have to
Yep.
do all
Especially
the hours.
comics.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh
the
boy,
one
yes.
medium where this takes a long time.
Yeah. You chose one of those mediums that is just like
Exactly.
years and
Yep.
working for years on something.
Yep. It's like, I have this idea. It's like, do you really want to go through with this? You know, the commitment.
Hundreds of thousands of
Hundreds of
drawings.
thousands. Yep.
Yeah, and it's not only that, but you have to also flex your storytelling muscles. It's just
It's insane.
it's a
I
lot.
comic art. It's an art form that I don't think people understand just how many skills you need to have to be able to not
Yeah.
even be that good. Even telling a somewhat good story, I think, is just as powerful, and it's a
Yes.
lot of skills.
Oh
Yeah.
yes. It really is. And especially when you're doing everything, because you're writing, you're storyboarding, you're coloring, you're
Mm-hmm.
inking, drawing, whatever. So much work. And
Mm-hmm.
I applaud you for taking on that Goliath and of a beast.
Yep. And one of my YouTube videos is doing it for 24 hours straight, and that was an experience as well.
I don't know how you did that. It's just
I don't
insane.
know either. I'm not
Why
even
did
sure
you
why I did
put
it.
yourself through that pain?
Because had just started the pandemic, so
Oh,
why not?
you needed something to like entertain yourself with.
It's like, I mean, I feel like we all ask ourselves, what if we had 24 hours to do the one thing we want to be doing?
Yeah.
So I went for it, and several regrets for sure.
I bet. I'm sure I would not be able to be efficient in doing so, like, work on so many hours straight because
You sure about that? You sure?
I don't think I want to try. I'm like the one thing that gets me to be stupid, full stupid is not getting sleep. So like I would
Yeah, it's
not
the
be
worst
able to
part.
do it. Yeah. That and maybe if you told me I couldn't eat while doing it, then it just would be
Oh,
game
you can
over.
definitely eat.
Yeah.
There's rules behind it, but if you're ever interested, let me know.
Send me the rule. So I can die and blame you for it. Be like,
Yeah.
you made me do this.
Don't worry, I'll be your moral support.
Thank you. Well, I guess with this, I'd love to end the podcast here on this super funny note and just thank you again for coming. I know that, I'm anxious too. So a lot of people get a lot of anxiety about coming into the podcast. I hope you were not feeling anxious about it. And if you did, I hope that I put you at ease, at least.
I keep forgetting we're on a podcast, so
Oh, you did?
I think that's a good thing.
Perfect. I try. But
This was awesome, and thank you again for inviting me. This is a lovely conversation, and I appreciate what you do to try to just get us out there and our advice and our journeys out there, because that's really important.
Well, guys, that was the episode for you today. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed talking to Jasmin, and I'll see you for the next one.